Planet Sewers, it's Mathletee here. Today I am bringing you the speed build of my Pygmy Hippo house. So I do have this in the workshop along with a video on how to place it, path it, and set it up. If you were interested in how it was built, this video is for you. Cute little pygmy. Alright, so how I started doing this was I knew I wanted an underwater viewing area. I used the tunneling tool on the path to kind of get me started. So I ran the path down and then deleted the path. Used that area as my starting point for the water areas. So I'm using flattened terrain to go around and create a nice pond lake for the hippos. And I do run it out to the side to attach it to my river. I'm going to build a waterfall over there later. The next thing I do is get the terrain tamp tool, and I use the advanced movement so that I can make a terrain ramp for my pygmy hippos. And then what I'm going to do is make two of them. I'm going to put one over here so they can get to their little land area in that nook, and I'm going to put one in the middle where I'm going to have the entrance to the habitat so they can get in and out on both sides. And if you didn't know that you can advance move with those terrain tools, it's a really good tool. It's useful. I didn't know that for a long time, and I was struggling to flatten the surface, and I was watching a speed video and I saw the creator doing that with the terrain stamp. I was, that's amazing. I had no idea I could do that. It made my life so much easier. So I'm putting in my barrier. I think I would like it to be just following along the path. And that way I can put my hippos in and pause the game after I verify that they can or cannot use the ramps I have built with them out of the terrain. That way I don't fill it with water and do all the decorations and then find out that they can't use it, have to go back. I've done that a few times. Live and learn. And so I've got that finished. I'm gonna add my habitat gate over there in my backstage area. And here's the hippos. So I'm checking. I do see right here they can't quite make it. So I'm gonna try a little bit of smoothing, and it worked. So that time it turned out really simple to fix it. Sometimes it's not. So my underwater viewing galley, I knew I wanted it over here when I built it in mind when I did the terrain. So I'm tucking away the shops inside the terrain a little bit to give me space to build the little plaza for them while they're down there. And just picking out the different vendors. I did check before to see what I already had in my zoo to make sure I wasn't repeating too many. I do like to have a variety of vendors. And we're going to put a bathroom down here. Picking out my floor. Not that it matters because I will cover it up later. Going ahead and setting down some grid. And I don't want to use too much of their water space because hippos, not pygmy, but the other hippo, does require quite a bit of space. So I was trying to make this habitat good for both. Now trying to connect into my outer paths. I did delete my struggles here. I was trying to keep the video under 30 minutes. I failed. And this actually had about 6 hours of real-time play that I cut down and sped up into under 40 minutes. So I did delete quite a few of my trial and errors to get things to work out. And that does happen. You have one idea in mind, the game has a different idea, and you have to go back and see how you're gonna get it to work or change your plan. Right now I'm placing my barrier for my underwater viewing gallery so that guests can see them from the food court down there. And then adjusting my path so that they can get close to the barrier on all sides and still be able to get to the different things here. And this is when I decided I will be covering the floor so that my wonky paths aren't visible. Chose the aquatic theme. My Otter House is next door, so I wanted them to have the same look and feel. I chose different colors than the Otter House. Otter House is yellow. Obviously this one's a peach pink. So here I separated that from the building so I could get the right angle going to connect them. I end up just making a straight line of these pieces and then adjusting them again so that I can get them as flush as possible with the barrier. On the left, one is not connecting how I would like it to, so I'm going to remove that. And this piece has non-grid, what I call filler pieces, so I'm going to use that to get a nice connection. I was a little sad that I had to block the view of the ramp a little bit, but later on this does give me a good spot to put the habitat education board. I wish the game did have more of these pieces available. I find that building in squares gets old really fast. I like to do angles and curves. If you like to build that way too, I'm sure you understand the struggle later of how am I going to roof this thing. For me, with this build, I really didn't have any inspiration in mind, just an idea, a space to fill, and I knew what animal I wanted. So for the architecture, it just kind of created itself through trial and error, what the game allows, what the game doesn't allow, what game pieces for building. And so it just kind of created itself. I had a different idea in mind originally for some parts of this, but I couldn't get them to work and changed my ideas, not the build, but just usage of space. Originally, I wanted this to be a 2-story viewing platform. I wanted the underground part, and then I wanted an above ground part. Once I got the underground finished, I tried to do some pathing, and it wasn't working how I wanted it to fit how I designed the outside walking space. And I scratched that idea and ended up turning that space into the hippo's shelter. I'm finishing off adding faces to my downstairs buildings. I tend to just like to cover up the bathrooms and then put doors over them. I don't ever really know what to do with the insides of them. There's not pieces for me that visually I like where you still can see the inside. I see some creators do some really creative things with them. I personally just prefer to cover up the tile and let you guys know, hey, there's a bathroom here with a sign. And filling in over here, trying to just not have too much terrain showing through. I am stuck with the terrain over there above the bathrooms because of the path and where I have the null barrier. I did not want to redo those, and I will do some rock work over there later. Putting in a staff hut so that they have a place to take a break. Making sure that the negative impact area is not going to be too great so I don't have the guests complaining about it. I think I've got it placed far enough away. Once I get building items on it, it will reduce that red ring. If needed, I'll put some plants in there. I did move all the terrain out. I just skipped that part in my editing. But that is a useful trick, is fill those with different plants. I have found that the variety of plant is what matters more than how many there are. Adding a staff only sign, little details, separating that from the building, getting a little place marker for where I'm going to have my archways, adding in the connector here, flipping it around so that it matches up nice and neat with that one, and then I'll spin it to connect into the corners and scoot it around some more, and then get the right pieces in. Go ahead and change that out for an archway. Looks like I had a little bit of a struggle. Sometimes the camera angles aren't in my favor. There's thunder in the background. I don't know if my microphone is picking it up or not. I live in Houston. It's been raining for weeks off and on, and it's getting ready to have a big thunderstorm, and I can hear that thunder rolling through my headphones. So if it picks it up, that's what it is. Let's get that wall just in the right spot. Go ahead and finish off some of the hidden areas. I wasn't sure what was going to be visible and what wouldn't be. I like to go ahead and place them in while I can see it, just in case. Starting a little bit of rock work here. I mentioned before I wasn't able to move all that terrain due to where I have the barrier and where I have the path. So I decided to go ahead and do some aquatic rocks, since this is an aquatic animal and an aquatic theme build. I thought it would be fun to go ahead and decorate this a little bit like a cave underwater feature, mostly to hide away all the terrain I couldn't move. I typically use advanced move with the rocks. There are some keyboard shortcuts that work too. I find that mine gets stuck. I don't know if that happens to you, but whenever I use control or shift, when I change the rock, it's still locked in on the shift function or the control function for left and right, backwards and forwards. Sometimes I will just let the auto rotate and the auto align to surface move the rocks for me. Sometimes it tries to align itself to the space. Sometimes that looks really good. Other times I'll use Z to rotate it around, and then I'll use shift to push it into the terrain or pull it out some. However, when it does get stuck, that's a little frustrating. Getting it to release. And the advanced move, I can hit X and then just hit M to slide around to the next spot. It took me a while to learn all of these tricks, different ways to place items, move them around. One of the fun things about Aquatic Rocks is you can recolor these. So if you decide to use this blueprint in your zoo, you can recolor these rocks if you like to make them a different color. And finishing off the top part over there that I forgot, it's time to start the floor. I had decided I was going to cover up some of that wonky pathing. I had a little bit of struggle keeping it all in grid. So in goes the floor. We do have a unique shape here. So the floor is, I believe, in 3 groups. I decided to run straight from the windows and the stairs so that that had its own pattern and make that the higher level, and then the 2 sides coming off of it to keep the pattern change less noticeable. These are bigger pieces, so they're harder to get to tuck away in the edge. I did use Aquatic Rocks on the outside. That is another option. If you want to keep everything the same pattern, you can put the floor in, let it run into the habitat, and then use rocks to cover it up in this case where it's underwater. I didn't want to do that here because sometimes that will affect their traversable area, and I wanted to make sure that they were still able to move around in there, so I didn't want too many rocks running through there. And so I decided to split the floor up and just kind of have the different patterns going where there's a shift in the direction of the tiles. I still think it turned out nice. I wish that they had a few more floor options that were smaller pieces. There are some non-grid pieces that work great for floors, but it does end up with high piece counts, which affects the game's ability to run when you have bigger zoos. Adding in tables and other details down here before I close it off. I made everything the same color as the walls That's one thing I do like about the aquatic theme. A lot of its pieces you can change to fit your color scheme. I do enjoy the picnic tables for this set. They are a little bit large. And adding in a small wall up here to get everything level with the ground. And then we'll add in that little small piece right there and get the inside done. And it was off by just a smidge over here. So what I decided to do was use a classic theme trim piece, which is gridded, so it made it a little more difficult. I had to split these into groups. It was a little hard to get it lined up just right. I let it align itself, split it from the group, and then would advance move when it wouldn't let me quite get it where I wanted. That is one of the biggest things I learned, was how to split things out of the group so that I could advance move them instead of being limited to that grid. I think that's one of the neatest things I've learned that really opened up my building and ability to be creative with the game. I'm adding my Pygmy Hippo house sign. I love this trick. I use it a lot since I learned it, and that's using signs and hiding them so it looks like it was painted onto the wall. I find that to be much more pleasing to the eye than just the big old sign. Adding in a few more details inside, trash cans, ATM, making them all match my walls here so they blend in around, and adding a few more rocks here. I was worried that that terrain would peek through once I got the floor in, and I did not want to try to do this once I have the floor ceiling on top of it. And originally I had in mind for what I was going to do next was put in a path over that section so guests could walk out as I'm building this. This was what I had in mind. However, when I went in with the path, it had to be a lot higher than where I was, and I decided not to do it that way. I didn't want to adjust the entire building to be able to keep that original idea. So I went ahead and added my roof floor patio here, however you want to look at it. It's the roof to the viewing gallery, the floor to what is going to become the Pygmy Hippo shelter. So I'm finishing off the flooring, getting everything lined up, trying to replicate what I had underneath, keeping the same kind of pattern, a straight shot from that window that's at an angle, and then the same thing off to the left and the right, except I did want a little overhang because originally this was supposed to be for people to walk out and be able to see the hippos. And since that idea didn't work, you will see a little bit of a skip in the recording because originally I went around all of this with some aquatic barriers that started from the rocks, came out over this patio, and then around to where the rocks started again over near the otter habitat. And I ended up deleting most of the aquatic railing that was running around the habitat since the hippos technically don't need it. I guess the hippos might need it so they don't just plop into the water. I would have to go look up if hippos actually do that. Do they fling themselves in? Or can they only get in shallow areas? I'd have to look that up. I don't know. And carrying on with the outside of the building, deciding how it's gonna work itself out. With this, I let it kind of create itself based off of what was going on underneath. I really was trying to keep as square as possible on the top part so that roofing would be easier. And going in and covering up those little bit of floor pieces that were sticking out inside the habitat. And I wanted it to, again, keep it where hopefully the hippos could keep their traversable area down there, and also trying to make it not look so repetitive. I also kept looking from both sides because I did not want too many rock pieces coming through from the water area into the outside area. It made sense on that one side since I did have some rock work going on. However, on the other side, I do not. So I really wanted to keep the rocks not in the viewing gallery. I wanted them just outside. So I kept a nice little grouping until I covered that last little bit, added a few more, and then used the Aquatic Stair to ensure that the hippos could get up on those rocks and hopefully move around. And that looks pretty good to me. So here we go with the Aquatic Stairs. And I didn't understand how those worked when I first started playing the game. In my mind, I thought, well, if I put a stair in, the animals should be able to use it. I didn't know that some animals need a bigger space to traverse, and so you may need the left and the right side. So I'm checking that traversable area. They can walk on it, so success. And I do end up adding more aquatic stairs. For the hippo, it does need a double width. It can't just be the single. Although I had a blooper, I guess. It's not in my footage. So I did create a staircase, which is right there, at the bottom of the screen, so that they could get up to this area. Since my idea with the guest lookout wasn't going to happen, I decided to see if the hippos could make it up here and use this as a shelter. I'm adding in the glass, finishing off a little bit of the piecing inside to make everything smooth. It doesn't look so smooth from the top, but inside it looks nice. And some of these I would add one on each side so that it has a nice flat surface outside and one inside. Sometimes I get a little scatterbrained in my building. I'll hit a spot where I'm not sure what to do, or I'm a little tired from the complexity. So I decided to do something simple. Lighting. Make it nighttime, go around and add lighting everywhere. And these lights also serve on the path over there as kind of a guide if you download that from the workshop. I also have a video on how to place it if you struggle with some of the pathing. It also has the full tour from the guest point of view. I did not do a full tour with this video as the speed build itself is quite long, and I do have that on the other video. I also felt you get a pretty good idea what this looks like through the speed build process. I do have some cinematics at the end for you. I decided the aquatic light would make a great table lamp here, so I sunk them into the picnic tables, adding a little decoration over our shops here. As I was doing this build, I would think, oh, I'm almost done, and then I would remember, oh, I need to add this detail, or oh yeah, I need to add plants, or terrain, I gotta change that. And several times I'd be like, oh, I'm almost done, and I would go around, take some screenshots so that I could put it on the Steam workshop, and I would see different things that either I forgot to do or I need to fix that. And a good example is I did habitat boards, just the simple ones, and then I had this great idea to make the Aquatic Rock exhibit board that's on the Steam workshop so that it would match the rest of the theme, and so I had to go around and replace all the education boards I had already placed with that one so that they would all look the same around here. And I moved some lights around as I added in that wall. Turn it back today. I often forget when I'm in sandbox mode. If I turn it tonight, I'll just keep going because I'm so used to building at night. In franchise mode, I've mentioned this before, I tend to have a curse. I'll start building and then the sun sets or it starts raining. Something happens where I'm in the dark, so I often forget to change it back. And here I am starting my roof. I was going around trying different things, trying to figure out how to get each piece to match up where the two different buildings come together. Like I said earlier, I was really trying to keep this as square as possible so that my roof would not need to be super custom. And I really wanted to use those inverted pieces, so I was playing around with it to see what I could create. I came up with this. If you hear my bird in the background, in the last few minutes I've cut her out maybe 10 times. So we're gonna leave that one in. Everybody say hello to Ruby. And anyway, back to my roof here. I really wanted to see what I could do with those inverted pieces. So I put them together, filled them in, and then lifted it up to get it out of the way. Added what I thought what I would need to kind of get those pieces to come together where I wouldn't have any holes. So I see I do have a little bit there. Adding in a few more so that I can set this down, hopefully not have any gaps. Adding in to meet and adjusting it. I wanted to see if I could get those points to match, and I did. And I was just giving an overview. I decided this side looked a little off, so I brought the roof out a little bit to give it a different look up here, and so it didn't just disappear into the building. It didn't look natural to me. Bring that out, add some more wall in. I was pretty pleased with how this roof turned out. I do struggle with custom roofs, and this is just a little bit of adding in the ceiling to separate the roof from when you first walk in. I didn't want all that to be visible from the inside. It was tight spaces, so I cut a lot of it out. My camera kicked me off into the other side of the zoo a couple times. Adding my eaves here, finishing off those little details. I like the little overhang, cover up some of the edge where things weren't quite right. I did struggle to get things the right height. I often have to duplicate it once I get it set from another one. I can't just pick it from the list there, which is why sometimes I have a floating roof piece, also to get the color scheme from it. Adding in some windows up here so that at night they'll have a little light up there. I like how they show a little light, give a little realism through the windows. And off to some finishing touches. We need doors, and there's Ruby again. So we're gonna go ahead and get these doors on here. Grabbed my Hippo House sign, decided I needed one outside, and we're setting up all the different things for our hippos. I really wanted to set enrichment items over on their little shelter patio. It just would not let me because there's no terrain. So I did put some things over there if it would let me. I did get a little squirrely in my direction at this point. I would see different things and get distracted. So adding the animal talk point, bringing in my sunshade. I used this in my otter habitat. It's also available on the workshop by itself in the habitat and with the animal talk point. Moving around my barriers here, I could see that certain items were not accessible to the staff workers, so adding in some rocks so hopefully they can get over there. I can see that so far they can get on those rocks, so adding in little details to get them across and down on this side so that they can hopefully reach the enrichment items I've put over there. I love that new tool came with the last DLC update. And yay, they can get over there. Previously, there was not a view for that. It was just guesswork until the game told you they could make it. So I'm so happy to have that tool to be able to see where they can walk within the habitat. Donation bins everywhere. I'm hiding them inside these trunks, hopefully to keep people from walking through them. But donations are important, keeping your finances good. So I like to put them all over the place. And oh, look, we got some donations already. Woohoo! Getting some terrain fixed. I often forget about under the rocks, that it counts as the terrain. Getting in the water, trying to finish off the last pieces for our hippos so we don't attract any protesters. I often, with some animals, I need the habitat to have the animal in it so I can see where they can move, where they can't move, and I'll have protesters in my zoo because of their welfare, even though I'm built on pause, trying to figure out, can they get there? And looks like I've got everything happy for them. And here is that build for the Aquatic Education Board. It started off super simple with just those two pieces. And then as I went around to take screenshots, because I thought I was done, I noticed, I can see straight through it. At one point I did add the education speaker to it and then filled in the backside so that you can not see everything through on the other side. In some areas it didn't matter, like over here where I added it to the otter habitat, where it's up against the barrier or the wall like it is here. But on a few of them I did add the rocks to the back, and at that point I decided to go ahead and make a blueprint of it in case I want to use it in my own zoo and to share with you guys. So there's adding in that speaker. I like to have those everywhere, especially in my franchise zoos. I notice there's a person standing in there, so I'm going to put a trash can inside, hopefully keep them from walking into it. And then I was looking for something to cover up the back with, because as I was taking screenshots, I noticed that was really ugly from the backside. Yeah, Ruby, it was really ugly. Adding in different plants. I was trying to keep my plants off to the edge. I really didn't want to lose traversable area for the habitat on my hippos, because when I had checked, it looked like a regular hippopotamus could fit in here based off of the numbers. So I did test that, and they do. If they have babies, you may need to extend some area for them. Probably I would do it over what's near the otter habitat if I had space. I did use this when I set it down with hippos, so actually I have two of these in my blueprint zoo, one I built originally and the blueprint. Adding in all those plants, I decided again to put them on the rocks to save space. So my progress with their happiness about their coverage of plants is pretty slow, as I'm trying to find smaller items that aren't going to take away their traversable area too much. And I have noticed using repetitive plants tends to not always count, and sometimes different plants provide better coverage than others for different animals. So sometimes it's about finding the right tree that's gonna give that coverage a boost. So sometimes I'll try a tree and then take it out until I find one that moves that coverage better. Adding some more trees, and I finally hit the green. It does help a little bit that the trees outside count, since they're technically in the barrier. I decided I wanted to build a cover over the water enrichment so that it would better match its surroundings. I had put the plants in there to remind me to do it, and again I was, oh yay, I'm done. And then I saw those in a screenshot. I said, oh yeah, I was going to cover those. I do intend to put that on the Steam Workshop. I just forgot. that I wanted to do that for you guys and share that. Also so I can use it again in my own zoos in the future. I kept it simple, but I feel like it came out really well and matches my little theme here perfectly. And nudging things to get them just right to cover stuff up. And there goes a hippo right underneath it. And cover this one with the same one I just built. Get it right into place. Now that I have everything finished, all my little touches, have a look around, see what the hippos are doing. Also looking for good angles for screenshots, show off the final view of everything. And I think I've said that 10 times. Ruby has found a screw on her perch that she feels must be removed and is being quite noisy. Looks like somebody had knocked over a bin there. A magic poof of fixing it. And there goes a happy hippo and the other one. I love the viewing from down here. I was super excited with how it turned out. They're on fast mode, so they're trotting along. And there you have it, the whole view. Thank you for watching my video today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the RNG odds be ever in your favor.